Welcome back, March 4th, 2021. Now that our governor and other states are opening up and indeed demanding our public schools return to in-person learning, it's now well time to think about something that for many has been the unthinkable, the purpose and value of most public education. For just about a year now, many of us have decried the school closings in the name of COVID, saying how important in-classroom settings were for the vast majority of our children, our students. About 90% of our nation's elementary and secondary school children attend public schools. A bit less than 3% of our students are homeschooled. Charters constitute about 5% of our students. But there are a few truths that must adhere about education and in-classroom settings as well. Closing our schools has, of course, led to academic deficits, and we will be paying that price for some time to come, dramatically and immediately altering our children's daily and social and educational lives has led to an increase in social, mental, and emotional damage of our children. And the absence of clubs, athletics, and after-school programs has made all of the foregoing even worse. Recent data has revealed what many of us predicted a year ago. Mental health claims essentially doubled as a percentage of all medical claims for individuals aged 13 to 18 in 2020 compared with the same periods the year before. Claims for overdose among teens rose 95% in March and 119% in April last year versus those months in 2019, and substance use increased 65 and 63% respectively over the year before. Other social pathologies of our youth that increased included anxiety and depressive disorders. Much of this was predicted and ignored. As we wrote in April of last year and were mocked for writing, the closings have caused and will cause even more social damage for a great many of these children and their parents than the coronavirus ever would. All to protect children from a disease that will not directly affect them. The standard argument that social policy is often deployed or changed to protect our children has been turned on its head. Adults have engaged in some of the most dramatic social policy change in our history for something that will not harm children, while their solutions will. Their educational deficits may be the least of it. Schools and after-school programs and sports, after all, not just the center of our children's educational and social lives, they are often the place and sometimes the only place where many children receive nutritional meals, have strong adult presences, and are safe from harmful drugs and adults. For those children who are in functional homes, parents, already taxed from work and other coronavirus policy stresses, are taking on added responsibilities and work. This radical decision to have closed the schools won't end well for too many children and adults. But in these closings, while student learning suffered, parental learning was awakened to much of what the public and some private education industry was up to. And they did not like these adults, did not like what they learned. First, they realized what a lot of homeschooling parents realized years ago. Much of the public school curriculum ranges from not very good to terrible, and often terribly undermining of education's basic mission and what most parents expect of their schools. The nurture and enhancement of the wit of and character of children, in one former education school dean's framing of it. Second, they realized that too many in the professional educational establishment, especially at the teacher union level, did not see the education of children as a priority, but rather their own interests, which were ironically at odds with parental and children interests. What does an advocate of returning children to in-person learning say about schools that adopt such academic lesson plans as the 1619 Project, rife as it is with a rewriting of our nation's history, with highly questionable and indeed poor renderings of actual history? What does an advocate of returning children to in-person learning say about schools that adopt various BLM curriculums, such as in Ames, Iowa, to take but one example, where the school district is deploying a 13-point curriculum for its students? Among those 13 points, quote, "We are committed to dismantling the patriarchal practice that requires mothers to work double shifts, that require them to mother in private, even as they participate in justice work. Black villages, we are committed to disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended family in villages that collectively care for one another, and especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable, while being unapologetically black in our positioning. That is to say, in affirming that Black Lives Matter, we need not qualify our position. Close quote. As Inez Felcher-Stepman has written, the largest national teachers union has given its official stamp of approval to Black Lives Matter and to indoctrinating teachers with the concept of white fragility and its supposed cause, white supremacy culture, as part of professional development. The same national union runs a division solely dedicated to advancing Black Lives Matter and encouraging identity politics in schools. The National Education Association also officially failed to pass a resolution pledging to rededicate the union to the pursuit of increased student learning, ostensibly its purpose for existence. Out of the 100 largest school districts, precisely none have the words America or patriotism in their mission statements. This fact is even more shocking when one considers the public school system was originally created to teach American citizens how to preserve the republic they had been bequeathed. Noah Webster, one of the country's earliest textbook publishers and education advocates, wrote of a future American public school system, quote, "Begin with the infant in the cradle, let the first word he lisps be Washington," close quote. Now the public school system teaches students to view the indispensable man Washington as foremost and first, unforgivably, a slaveholder. As Clint Bolick points out in his recent book on education reform, one recent poll has shown that less than 1/3 of Americans believe the public schools are highly performing on the goals they consider most important: instilling citizenship, protecting students from violence and physical harm, and preparing students to enter the workforce, to understand America and its history, to think critically, to vote, to be curious, to respect America, and to compete globally. What to do? Most of us want our schools back open and our children in them, but not if they are being failed in the basic purposes and expectations of education, not for indoctrination in left-wing and progressive pedagogy and curriculum. Now, more than ever, we arrive at a point where true education reform has not only become necessary but desired. In the past, it was necessary. Now, after a year of witnessing the true nature of our nation's educational depredations, more and more eyes have been opened to the necessary part. Of course, not every family can homeschool, given the demand of work and time on too many families, but those that can or that can engage in learning pods will increase and should. School choice, after too long a period of being absent from our national debate, will return, and in expanded areas from open enrollment and charters to private education, and of course enhancing and supporting homeschooling. New and expanded tax credit scholarship programs and education savings accounts, providing parents the financial wherewithal for greater educational options, should be taken up by every state legislature and demanded by voters in their state and legislative elections. Few ideas will help strap public education dollars to the backpacks of children better than these concepts that embrace the best of historical education philanthropy, as well as common sense. But it must be kept in mind, choice is only a means to an end, not an end unto itself. In some places it will prove meager, in others, some private and even charter schools are as bad or worse than the assigned and traditional public school. It's true. Choice, it turns out, is close to meaningless if there is no great choice available, which is to say truly available options and curricula that embrace great content in schools that help develop good character in our pupils. We have a lot of problems in American education, and for the $800 billion Americans spend on elementary and secondary education, we should have the equivalent quality in American education that we have in American military force, readiness and quality for about the same expense. We don't. Nothing close. And it turns out keeping our schools closed for the past year may have been the least of the problems, at least when it comes to teaching and learning. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.